The Platform Sutra. The Platform Sutra of the Sixth Patriarch, also known as Platform Sutra of the Dharma Treasure of the Great Master, the Sixth Patriarch. Number 1. Account of Origins. Compiled by Bhikshu Zongbao, successor to the Patriarch and Abbot of Bao and Guangxiao Jiansu. Retribution of Grace and Refulgence of Filiality Meditation Monastery, where occurred the incident involving the wind and the banner. Translated from Chinese into English by John R. McRae. The unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of eons. I now see and hear it, receive and uphold it, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. When the Great Master arrived at Paolin Su Treasure Grove Monastery, Prefect Wei, whose given name was Chu, and his official staff entered the monastery and invited the Master to come to the lecture hall at Tafan Su, or Great Purity Monastery, within the city, where he could tell his story and preach the Dharma for those assembled. After the Master took his seat, the prefect and official staff, more than 30 in number, the Confucian scholars, more than 30 in number, and the monks, nuns, and lay people, more than 1,000 in number, simultaneously did obeisance to him and beseeched him to relate the essentials of the Dharma. The Great Master told the assembly, "Good friends, Bodhi is fundamentally pure in its self-nature. You must simply use this mind that you already have, and you will achieve Buddhahood directly and completely. Good friends, listen well. This is the story of how I practiced and attained the Dharma. My father was a native of Fanyang, but he was banished to Lingnan and became a commoner in Xinjiao. I have been unfortunate. My father died early, and my aged mother and I, her only child, moved here to Nanhai. Miserably poor, I sold firewood in the marketplace. At one time, a customer bought some firewood and had me deliver it to his shop, where he took it and paid me. On my way out the gate, I saw someone reciting a sutra, and as soon as I heard the words of the sutra, my mind opened forth in enlightenment. I then asked the person what sutra he was reciting, and he said, "The Diamond Sutra." I also asked, "Where did you get this sutra?" He said, "I have come from Tongchansu, or Eastern Meditation Monastery, in Huangmei, Sen in Chichao. The Fifth Patriarch, Great Master Heng Zhen, resides at and is in charge of instructions at that monastery. He has over 1,000 followers." I went there, did obeisance to him, and received this sutra there. Great Master Heng Zhen always exhorts both monks and laymen to simply maintain the Diamond Sutra so that one can see the self-nature by oneself and achieve Buddhahood directly and completely. My hearing this was through a karmic connection from the past. Someone then gave me 10 liang of silver to pay for my aged mother's food and clothing, and told me to go to Huangmei to do obeisance to the Fifth Patriarch. I then left my mother for the last time and departed. In less than 30-odd days, I arrived at Huangmei, where I did obeisance to the Fifth Patriarch. The Patriarch asked me, "Where are you from, and what is it you seek?" I replied, "Your disciple is a commoner from Xinjiao in Lingnan, and I have come this far to pay reverence to you. I wish only to achieve Buddhahood, and do not seek anything else." The Patriarch said, "If you are from Lingnan, then you must be a hunter. How could you ever achieve Buddhahood?" I said, "Although people may be from north or south, there is fundamentally no north and south in the Buddha nature. Although this hunter's body is different from your reverences, how can there be any difference in the Buddha natures within?" The fifth patriarch wanted to speak further with me, but seeing that his followers were gathered all around, he told me to go with them to work. I said, "If I might address your reverence, your disciple constantly generates wisdom in my own mind. To not transcend the self-natures is equivalent to the field of blessings. I wonder what work your reverence would have me do." The patriarch said, "Some cloud barbarians. You're very sharp. Don't say anything else. Go to the workshed." I then retired to a chapel in the rear of the monastery. A practitioner had me break up kindling and tread the hulling pestle. After more than 8 months of this, the patriarch came unexpectedly one day to see me. He said, "I thought your views might have been of use, but I was afraid there were evil people who might have harmed you. That was why I haven't spoken to you. Do you understand this?" I replied, "I understood your intentions. I have not dared go by the main hall, so as not to remind people." One day, the patriarch called all of his followers together and addressed them, saying, "I preach to you that life and death is the great concern for people of this world, but you spend all your time seeking only the fields of blessings rather than seeking to escape the ocean of sufferings of birth and death. If you are deluded as to the self-natures, how can you be saved by blessings? You should each go reflect upon your own wisdom. Taking the essence of prajna within your own fundamental minds, you should each compose a verse and come show it to me. If you are enlightened to the great meaning, I will transmit the robe and Dharma to you and make you the patriarch of the 6th generation. Go quickly. This is an emergency, and you must not delay." Thinking is of no use. He who is to see the self-nature will see it immediately upon hearing these words. If there is such a one here, he will see it even if encamped on top of a circle of knives. The assembly of followers received these instructions and retired, saying to each other, "We followers do not have to purify our minds and work to compose verses. What advantages would there be in showing anything to His Reverence Heng Zhen? The elder Shen Shu is now our instructor, and he will certainly attain the rank of 6th Patriarch. If ones such as us tried to compose verses, we would only be wasting our energies." The others heard these words, and all of them gave up working on the problem. They all said, "Afterward, we will rely on Master Shen Shu. Why trouble to compose verses?" Shen Shu thought, "They are not going to submit verses, thinking that I am their instructor. I must compose a verse and submit it to His Reverence. If I do not submit a verse, how will His Reverence know the profundity of understanding within my mind? If I submit a verse with the intention of seeking the Dharma, it would be good. But if I am seeking to become patriarch, it would be bad. How would that be any different from one with an ordinary mind usurping the sagely status? But if I don't submit a verse, I'll never attain the Dharma. What a problem! What a problem!" There was a hallway 3 bays in length in front of the 5th Patriarch's hall, where the auxiliary Lu Chen was to be asked to paint episodes from the Lankavatara Sutra and a diagram of the 5th Patriarch's lineage, all for wider dissemination and offerings. When Shen Shu had finished making up his verse, he tried several times to go to the front of the hall to offer his verse in person. But his mind was in a daze, and his body covered with sweat, and he was unable to submit his verse. Over the space of 4 days he tried 13 times to submit his verse, but couldn't. He thought, "It would be better to write it in the hallway. After His Reverence sees it, if he says it is good, I will come forward and bow to him, saying that it was mine. If he says it is unacceptable, I will have wasted several years at this monastery. I will have received the obeisance of others, but what way will I have cultivated?" On that night, in the 3rd watch, about 1:00 a.m., so that no one else knew, Shen Shu took a lamp and wrote his verse on the wall of the south corridor, submitting to the patriarch the viewpoint of his mind. The verse read, "The body is the Bodhi tree. The mind is like a bright mirror's stand. Be always diligent in rubbing it. Do not let it attract any dust. After Shen Shu finished writing his verse, he returned to his room without anyone knowing. Shen Shu thought, "Tomorrow, if the Fifth Patriarch sees my verse and is pleased, it will mean I have a karmic connection with the Dharma. If he says it is unacceptable, it will mean I am deluded by the layered barriers of past karma and am not fit to attain the Dharma. The sagely intention is difficult to fathom." He remained in his room, thinking but unable to rest, either sitting or lying down. When it came to the fifth watch, about 5:00 a.m., the Patriarch knew that Chen Xin had not been able to enter the gate and had been unable to see the self-nature. When morning came, Hung Zhen called the auxiliary Lu to come paint the lineage and episodes on the wall of the south corridor. Unexpectedly seeing the verse, he announced, "There is no need for you to paint anything. I am sorry we had troubled you to come so far. The Diamond Sutra says, quote, 'All that which has characteristics is false.' We should just leave this verse here for people to recite. By cultivating in reliance upon this verse, they will avoid falling into the unfortunate modes of existence. To cultivate according to this verse will be greatly beneficial." Hung Zhen then commanded his followers to burn incense and do obeisance to the verse, saying, "All who recite this verse will be able to see the nature." The followers recited it, all of them sighing at how excellent it was. But in the third watch that night, the Patriarch called Shen Shu into the hall and asked him, "Is this verse yours?" Shen Shu said, "Yes, it is mine, but I am unable to seek the status of Patriarch. I seek your reverence's compassion. Do I have some small wisdom or not?" Hung Zhen said, "When you composed this verse, you had not seen the fundamental nature. You have come only as far as outside the gate. You have not yet come inside. With understanding such as this, you will not be able to attain the unsurpassable Bodhi. The unsurpassable Bodhi is to be able, at these very words, to recognize your own fundamental mind and to see that your own fundamental nature is neither born nor extinguished. It is to see this naturally, in every moment of thought and at all times. The myriad dharmas are without obstruction. The one is true, and all are true. The myriad realms are naturally thus-like, and the thus-like mind is the true. If what you see is like this, then it is the self-nature of the unsurpassable Bodhisattva. Go now and meditate upon this for a day or two. Compose another verse and bring it to me. I will see from your verse whether you have been able to enter the gate and whether I should transmit to you the robe and Dharma." Shen Shu bowed and went out, but even after several days he was unable to create another verse. His mind was in a daze, and his spirit was disturbed, as if he were in a dream, and he could take no pleasure in either walking or sitting. Huineng continued. After a couple of days, an acolyte passed by the halling room reciting the verse. Upon hearing it, I immediately knew that the author of the verse had not seen the fundamental nature. Although I had never received any instruction, I had already recognized the great intention of the sages, so I asked the acolyte, "What verse is it you're reciting?" The acolyte said, "What a disgusting hunter you are! Don't you know that the great master Hung Zhen has said that life and death is the great concern for people of this world, and wanting to transmit the robe and bowl, he commanded his followers to compose verses and show them to him? If there were one who was enlightened to the great intention, he would transmit the robe and Dharma and make that one the Sixth Patriarch. The elder Shen Shu wrote a formless verse on the wall of the south corridor. Great Master Hung Zhen has commanded us all to recite it, saying that if we cultivate on the basis of this verse, we will avoid falling into the unfortunate modes of existence, that it will be very beneficial to cultivate on the basis of this verse." I said, "Holy One, I have been treading the pestle here for more than 8 months, and I've never even gone past the front of the hall. I would like you to take me to this verse so that I might do obeisance to it." The acolyte took me to the verse so that I could do obeisance to it. I said, "I am unable to read, Holy One. Would you read it for me?" At that time, Chang Ji Young, the administrative aide of Chang Chao, was there, and he read the verse to me aloud. After hearing it, I said, "I also have a verse and would like the administrative aide to write it for me." The administrative aide said, "You've composed a verse? How unusual!" I said to the administrative aide, "If you wish to study the unsurpassable Bodhi, you should not make light of beginners. The lowest of the low may have the most supreme wisdom, and the highest of the high may be without spiritual intention or wisdom. To make light of others is a transgression unlimited and infinite." The administrative aide said, "Just recite your verse. I will write it for you. If you attain the Dharma, you must save me first. That is, before teaching anyone else. Don't forget what I say." My verse went, "Bodhi is fundamentally without any tree. The bright mirror is also not a stand. Fundamentally, there is not a single thing. Where could any dust be attracted?" After I finished this verse, everyone around there became agitated and couldn't help sighing with amazement. They all said to each other, "How strange! You just can't go by looks alone. Why is it always that people like that are living bodhisattvas?" Seeing that they were getting excited and worried that someone might harm me, the patriarch rubbed out the verse with his sandal and said, "This person, too, has not seen the nature." Those present accepted this. The next day, Hung Zhen secretly came to the hulling room, where he saw me with a rock on my back, pounding rice, and said, "He who seeks the way forgets his body on behalf of the Dharma. Is that how it is with you?" He then asked, "Is the rice ripe yet?" I replied, "The rice has been ripe for a long time. It only lacks sifting the hulls from the grain." The patriarch struck his staff on the pestle 3 times and left. I understood what he meant, that I should enter his room at the 3rd drum, that is, the 3rd watch of the night, about 1:00 a.m. The patriarch kept his robe, or kasaya, hidden and would not let anyone see it. He preached the Diamond Sutra for me. When he reached the words, quote, "responding to the non-abiding, yet generating the mind," I experienced a great enlightenment, realizing that all the myriad dharmas do not transcend their self-natures. I thereupon informed the patriarch of this, saying, "No matter when, the self-natures are fundamentally and naturally pure. No matter when, the self-natures are fundamentally neither generated nor extinguished. No matter when, the self-natures are fundamentally and naturally sufficient unto themselves. No matter when, the self-natures are fundamentally without movement. No matter when, the self-natures are able to generate the myriad dharmas." Knowing that I had been enlightened to the fundamental nature, the patriarch said to me, "If one does not recognize the fundamental mind, studying the Dharma is of no benefit. If one recognizes one's own fundamental mind, one sees one's own fundamental nature. This is to be called a great man, a teacher of men and gods, a Buddha." At the 3rd watch of the night, I received the Dharma. No one knew of this. He then transmitted the sudden teaching and the robe and bowl, saying, "You have become the patriarch of the 6th generation. You should maintain your own mindfulness well, and you should save sentient beings extensively. Do not allow the dissemination of the Dharma to be cut off in the future. Listen to my verse. Sentient beings cast their seeds. Because of the earth, the fruits are born. Insentient objects have no seeds, no natures, and no birth." The patriarch went on, "When great Master Bodhidharma came to this land long ago, people did not yet come to rely upon him. Therefore, he transmitted this robe as the embodiment of reliance upon him. It has been handed down for generation after generation. The Dharma, moreover, is the transmission of the mind with the mind. The mind must always enlighten itself, emancipate itself. From ancient times, the Buddhas have only transmitted the fundamental essence. The masters have secretly handed on the fundamental mind. The robe, however, has become the focus of conflict, and beginning with you, it should not be transmitted. If you transmit this robe, your life expectancy will be like a hanging thread. You should go quickly. I fear people will harm you. I addressed him, saying, "Where should I go?" The Patriarch said, "When you encounter destruction, you should stop. When you come to a group, you should secret yourself." In the third watch, I took the robe and bowl and said, "I am from South China and do not know the mountainous roads around here. How do I get to the mouth of the Yangtze River?" The fifth Patriarch said, "Do not be disheartened. I will see you off." The Patriarch accompanied me as far as Chu Chang section, where he had us get on a boat. The fifth Patriarch took the oar and rowed the boat himself. I said, "Your Reverence, please sit. Your disciples should row." Hung Jen said, "I should take you over to the other shore." I said, "When one is deluded, one thinks teachers take sentient beings over to the other shore. But when one is enlightened, one realizes one crosses over by oneself. Although cross over is only a single term, its uses are varied. Since I was born in a border region, my pronunciation is not correct. I have received transmission of the Dharma from you, Master, and I have now become enlightened. Can it be anything other than that the self-natures have crossed themselves over?" The Patriarch said, "So it is, so it is. In the future, Buddhism will flourish greatly because of you. 3 years after you go, I will depart this world. You should go now. Make an effort to go south, and don't be in a hurry to preach the Dharma. It is difficult to propagate Buddhism." After I left the Patriarch, I started out walking toward the south. In the second month of traveling, I reached the Taiyao Mountains. Hung Jen returned to the monastery, and for several days did not go into the hall. The assembly of followers was in doubt about this, and proceeded to him to ask, "Is your Reverence ill or discomforted in some small way?" He said, "I am not ill. The robe and Dharma are in the south." They asked, "To whom have you transmitted them?" He said, "One who is able has received them." Thus did the assembly learn of it. Coming after me were several hundred people who wanted to take away the robe and bowl. One monk of the lay surname Chen and named Hui Ming had previously been a general of the 4th rank. He was coarse and excitable by nature, and he really wanted to find me. He reached me before the rest of the group chasing me. I threw the robe and bowl down on a rock and said, "This robe emblematizes reliance upon the patriarchs. How can you struggle for it?" I hid in the underbrush, and Hui Ming tried to lift it without success. Then he called to me, saying, "Oh, practitioner, I have come for the Dharma, not for the robe." I then came out and sat on the rock. Hui Ming bowed to me and said, "I wish that you would preach the Dharma for me." I said, "You say you've come for the Dharma. If so, you must eliminate the various conditions and not generate a single thought. If you do, I will preach the Dharma for you." Hui Ming was quiet for a time. I said, "Do not think of good, and do not think of evil." At just such a time, what is Elder Hui Ming's original face? At these words, Hui Ming experienced a great enlightenment. He then questioned me again, saying, "Other than the secret words and secret intention you expressed just now, is there any other secret intention?" I said, "What I have preached to you is not secret. If you counter-illuminate your own original face, you will realize that the secret was on your side." Hui Ming said, Although I was at Hongzhen's monastery in Huangmei, I actually never thought about my own original face. To receive your instructions now is like a man who drinks water, knowing immediately whether it is cold or warm. Now you are my teacher." I said, "If this is the case, then we share the same teacher of Huangmei. Well should you protect and maintain the teaching." Hui Ming asked further, "Where should I go now?" I said, "When you encounter ampleness, you should stop. When you come upon munificence, you should reside." Hui Ming bowed and left. Hui Ming returned to the foot of the mountain. He addressed the group that had come after me, saying, "I just climbed this mountain of boulders, and there was no trace of him. We should try searching by another road." The group of those chasing Hui Ming all did as he said. Hui Ming later changed his name to Tao Ming in order to avoid the first character of his teacher's name. After this, I went to Zhao Qi. There, too, I was beset by evil people searching for me, and so fled to Suhui County, where I spent 15 years in all, living with a group of hunters. During this time, I preached the Dharma to the hunters when the occasion arose. The hunters had always had me guard their nets, but whenever I saw living animals in them, I set them free. Whenever it was mealtime, I put vegetables in the pot for boiling the meat. They asked me about this sometimes, and I would answer, "These are just vegetables to go with the meat." One day, I realized that the time had come to disseminate the Dharma, that I could not hide forever. Accordingly, I left the mountains and went to Fa Tsing Tzu, or Monastery of the Dharma Nature, in Guangzhou, where I encountered Dharma Master Yin Song lecturing on the Nirvana Sutra. At that time, the wind was blowing and the banner announcing the lecture was moving. One monk said that the wind was moving, while another monk said that the banner was moving. They argued on, so I went forward and said, "It is not the wind that is moving, and it is not the banner that is moving. It is your minds that are moving." Everyone listening was amazed. Yin Sung had me brought up to the dai, where he examined me on the import of what I had said. Hearing me say that the discrimination of the truth did not depend on written words, Yin Sung said, "You are certainly an extraordinary person. Long ago I heard that the robe and bowl of Huang Mei had come south. Might you be the one who received them?" I said, "In all modesty, I am." At this, Yin Sung bowed to me and asked me to bring forth the robe and bowl to show to the assembly. He questioned me further, saying, "What instructions did you receive at Huang Mei?" I said, "I received no instructions. Hung Jen and I only discussed seeing the nature. We did not discuss samadhi and emancipation." Yin Sung said, "Why did you not discuss samadhi and emancipation?" I said, "Because the dualistic dharmas are not Buddhism. Buddhism consists of non-dualistic dharmas." Yin Sung also asked, "How is it that Buddhism consists of non-dualistic dharmas?" I said, "You lecture on the Nirvana Sutra's elucidation of the Buddha nature, which is non-dualistic dharma of Buddhism. Just as when the Bodhisattva king of lofty virtue asked the Buddha, quote, 'Do those who break the 4 major prohibitions and commit the 5 perverse transgressions, as well as the Enchantikas, eradicate their good roots and Buddha natures?' Close quote. The Buddha said, quote, 'There are 2 types of good roots. One is permanent, and the other is impermanent. The Buddha nature is not permanent and not impermanent.'" Close quote. Therefore, not to eradicate is said to be non-dual. One type of roots is said to be the good, and the other is the non-good. The Buddha nature is not the good and not the non-good. This is called non-dual. The skandhas and sensory realms are seen as 2 by ordinary people, but the wise comprehend their natures to be non-dual. The non-dual nature is none other than the Buddha nature. When Ying Tsung heard this explanation, he joyfully held his palms together and said, "My lecturing on the sutra was like a worthless piece of roof tile or rock, while your explanation is like gold." At this, he administered the tonsure for me and asked to serve me as his teacher. Thus did I, under the Bodhi tree, reveal the East Mountain teaching. After receiving the Dharma at East Mountain, I experienced all kinds of suffering, and my life expectancy was like a dangling thread. Today, I have been able to join this assembly of the prefect, government staff members, monks, nuns, and lay people. Could it be but the karmic result of successive eons? Also, that you have been able to hear the sudden teaching just given and have gained the cause for attaining the Dharma can only be because in past lives you cultivated good roots identical to those of the Buddhas. The teaching is that which has been transmitted by the former sages. It is not something known to myself alone. I wish you would all listen to this teaching of the former sages. You should all purify your minds, and after hearing it, you should eradicate your doubts. You are no different from the former generations of sages. The entire assembly, after hearing this Dharma, joyfully did obeisance and dispersed.